Welcome to the Ayehu NG Quick Start Guide video. Let's get started by logging in with our username, password, and tenant name. Clicking this arrow in the upper left displays our main menu. From here, we'll start by selecting the Workflow Designer option under the Builder submenu. When we enter the Workflow Designer, the system prompts us to create a new workflow. We just need to enter a few pieces of information. On the left-hand pane of our screen, we have two tabs, Toolbox and Templates. Let's start with Toolbox. The upper section of the Toolbox tab contains activities. These are actionable objects from third-party or open-source platforms that can be inserted into an Ayehu workflow. If there are activities you find yourself using frequently, you can click on the star to their right, marking them as a favorite. They'll then appear on your My List. The lower section of the toolbox contains controls. These are logic structures and commands which let you control the flow of your automation. If you can't remember where an activity or control is located, just use the toolbox search bar up at the top. Together, all the activities and controls used to automate a process constitute a workflow. If you want to jumpstart your workflow development, just go to the Templates tab. Here you'll find pre-built workflows that have been saved as templates for later reuse. To use a template, simply drag and drop it onto the canvas or drawing board. On the upper right of your screen, you'll find some basic editing functions. The leftward arrow is undo, and the rightward arrow is redo. Next to that you'll find save, and to the right of that, save as. Continuing to the right, you'll find a play button to run your workflow, and a stop button to stop your workflow. The stop button becomes active during workflow execution. Finally, there's online help, which will open in a new browser tab when clicked. On the far right of your screen are some navigation controls. You can zoom in or out with this slider, or by clicking the appropriate magnifying glass icon. The next icon down provides a map view of your workflow, which is helpful when you want to zero in quickly on a specific part of your automation process. Below the map view is the filter by layer icon, which we'll review more in depth in a subsequent video. Finally, the Workflow Designer also includes a search capability that allows you to easily find an activity or control by either its name or its type. The name refers to the name for that activity or control, while the type refers to the type of activity or control. Types are static, but names can be modified. Now let's build our first workflow. This workflow will query a server for the status of a Windows spooler service. The first thing we'll need is an activity that can tell us the status of a service. We can find what we're looking for in one of two ways. In the toolbox, going to the services category of activities and grabbing the Get Service Status activity. Or, if we can't remember where something's located, we simply search for it in the search bar. I mentioned earlier that the name of an activity or control was modifiable. Let's change the default name of our Get Service Status activity to Spooler Status 1. Remember, all activity and control names within a workflow must be unique. While we're here, let's fill in a couple more activity-specific parameters. This particular activity has two required parameters. name, referring to the service name we want the status of, and the host name, where we can find it. In addition to drag and drop, workflow elements can be added via the little white circle beneath any given activity or control already on the workflow. Hovering over the little white circle toggles it to a plus sign. By clicking that plus sign, we get an option to add an activity from a drop-down list. We can also take advantage of Ayehu's built-in machine learning functionality, which offers suggestions on the next best activity or control to incorporate into our workflow. In this case, it's offering us 3 suggestions. And the first one just happens to be the one we want, an if-else activity. Now we'll add the conditions for this if-else activity, starting with the branch on the left side. Activities and controls are editable through their settings icon on the right. For this branch of the if-else activity, we're going to select the type as user-defined. Select an appropriate condition type, and input a value. Next, we'll go to the right side branch of the if-else activity. Since this branch will execute if the spooler's service status is anything but running, there's no need to add any logic here. However, we do need to restart the spooler, so we'll simply grab the appropriate activity to do that. In this service restart activity, we simply have to specify what service we'll be restarting and where it's located. Once again, we'll input a name and a host name. That should do it. Now, let's run our workflow. We can see the real-time results of our automation process in the workflow execution log at the bottom of our screen. As you can see in the results column, the workflow found the spooler was stopped. It then executed our service restart activity. And now the spooler is running. If you ever want to isolate elements or groups of elements in your workflow to try and pinpoint an error or test parts of it incrementally, that's easy to do. Just click the on-off toggle on the left side of an activity or control. When the red dot is visible, that means that particular activity or control has been turned off and will not execute in your workflow. That's all there is to it. Now that you've seen how easy it is to build a workflow, what are you waiting for? Happy automating.